This is The Gorge. This is a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on a different topic every week. The Gorge is brought to you by Ko-fi. That is ko-fi.com/THEGOR. You can donate a one-time thing where you can just buy us a coffee. You can give us like $1 or $3 or whatever, and then that all helps towards paying for our subscription fees and cool stuff like that.
Hey, the change in the transition from like talking about video games to just talking about random shit. Good job. Yeah. The change in the intro. Good job. Like thumbs up.
we're shifting gears to more broader topics, but this week is our video game week.
Right.
And Sara, what are we talking about this week?
We're talking. Oh man, I can't even do the bit. I wanted to do the bit. I was like, we're going to talk about God of War 2018. And then I was like, no, we're not. We're talking about Last of Us. But you know what? We're going to get salty about God of War 2018.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
We are talking about the prequel to God of War 2018.
which is The
Last of Us. We are taking a look at Joltos' origin story.
that sucks.
When he had his first child and then lost that first child and got a second child instead.
Yeah, I like the avant-garde direction that the series is taking, where instead of like it staying with Joel and Ellie, Joel just keeps obtaining more children instead and like traumatizing them instead of just the one. Yeah,
he is continuously moving on to different like early teenage children to kind of like bully at first and then form a begrudging attachment to. And
then eventually something horrible happens and that kid almost certainly ends up with some sort of trauma and, you know, it's fine. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Dad games became a thing pretty hard. The Last of Us is, you know... The Last of Us has a problem in that we are now talking about it in the aftermath of God of War 2018 and its 17,000 A+ reviews. And it has instantly soured my opinion of a game that I was already kind of like, you know, when I finished The Last of Us, I was like, oh, that was good. And then I moved on with my life, you know?
It's very much, the game is very much a product of its time. Mm-hmm. Because it was the pioneer of that sort of like, that particular genre of the sad dad game, you know?
Right.
Like, at the time, it was the best of the best in 2013.
Yeah.
But we are 5 years out from that, and there have been so many others that have come out that have, like...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that have, like, retroactively poisoned the well of that franchise.
Yeah.
Not franchise, but that genre.
This concept. We actually, when we were kind of talking about like my feelings of The Last of Us when I immediately finished it, I finished it like a month ago, something like that. When we finished it, we kind of had a little conversation, and I finished it and I enjoyed it. I don't feel very strongly about The Last of Us. I think it has some good moments in it and some good, some cool concepts and like really neat world building. I like the detail that Naughty Dog has poured into this game. That's a thing we'll kind of talk about in a minute. But when I was done with it, I was like, oh, that was pretty good. But the overwhelming horribleness of this world kind of like turned me off from it. And we were talking about it, and we realized, oh, this game in the first season of Game of Thrones, there's a lot of G's being thrown around, so
there's a lot of
Game of Thrones, God of War, Gears of War. Fuck. The first season of Game of Thrones aired like a month after? Like the first episode of Game of Thrones aired like a month after The Last of Us came out, or maybe I feel like it was even like a week. I don't know. I should have written it down, but it was a very close period of time. And that's not to say that they couldn't have influenced each other because both were being independently developed at the same time. But that's kind of where like media was going at that point in time. This idea of very dark, realistic, and that's in finger quotes.
Yeah.
Settings.
Very like pessimistic overall settings
cynical,
and stuff.
Like a cynical take on human nature kind of thing. And so both things kind of were being developed at a time when that was pretty common in media, and we've now kind of moved past that arc of storytelling.
What's funny is that we've very much transitioned to still a state of like everything sucks, but we are fighting like media is fighting against that everything sucks aspect.
Yeah.
Like they're acknowledging everything sucks, but like your hero of your game will be doing something about it, you know?
Yeah, to be more proactive in it. This is, of course, not related at all, but it is a good example of like the shift in tone in media. Wonder Woman has like a story that's about like some really horrible shit, but then like at the end of it, you know, like people get gassed and it's all awful. But then at the end of it, it's like, no, you know, the world like sucks, but here there are ways you can fight against it. You fight back against it with love and togetherness and blah blah blah, all that good stuff. And so like we've moved past that arc of media where everything just kind of sucks, and it's like, well, everything sucks, but God willing, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which is a good message to feed to people in 2018 when everything does suck.
Yeah.
So playing, I guess what I'm trying to get to, this whole long spiel, I've been talking for like 3 minutes now. What I'm trying to get to is that when I finished The Last of Us, I was not like super like, wow, this is the greatest game I've ever played. Which, when you go back and you see all the media chatter about The Last of Us back in the day, because I was still paying attention to video games when The Last of Us actually came out, it was a lot of those, what you're seeing now with God of War 2018. 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, best game.
Yeah.
Reviews. And I played the game, and I was like, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah. You know, there's... I was trying to think of, like, because I played it when it came out, and I thoroughly enjoyed it every step of the way. And now, in hindsight, like, it's not something I would really want to go back to, like, and replay at any point. Like, with stuff that came out afterwards that kind of did this exact, like, not this exact idea, but this kind of feeling, but did it better. Right. It's hard to go back to it and appreciate it for what it did at the time.
Horizon Zero Dawn comes to mind.
Horizon is a good example of that. Even stuff like, if you're talking about a world where everything sucks, Wolfenstein is a good example of that.
Yeah, because Wolfenstein and Horizon are both really fun to play.
Yeah, that also helps. So, you know, all of this is kind of will eventually lead into us talking more about the cinematic gameplay of a lot of games of this type, and a lot of like what this genre and what this style of storytelling is being put into. But in order to contextualize that, first we need to actually talk about The Last of Us.
Right. That is what this podcast is technically supposed to be about. It's about The Last of Us. But obviously, like we said, God of War 2018 came out last week, and it kind of changed my whole view on this genre of games and this game.
The timing of this worked out in a way that like it's worth to address both things at once.
Right. Let's talk about The Last of Us. It's intense. It has some good moments in it. There are parts I really enjoyed. There are parts of it that I just look back on it now and I was just kind of like, I don't know. I just like kind of have a big shrug toward it. The standout things are obviously, because again, cinematic. The standout things are like, wow, the motion capture in this game is fucking unreal.
Yeah, the motion capture, the overall asset design of this game, the graphics still hold up really well.
The PS4 Remastered Edition is incredible, honestly.
Yeah. All that stuff. The enemy AI, the way they like both types of enemies, the infected and the humans, both will confront you is still holds up pretty well.
Yeah.
The thing that I really still love about this, and I feel like other games haven't quite gotten to this point, is the way like not only are sets designed, but they are designed to feel like real buildings that you're going into.
Yeah.
Every house has like a unique layout to it that feels like a house you could actually go to.
Yeah, one of my favorite sections in the game, because one of the best things in the game is the bit after you get out of the city and you're walking around with Sam and what was the brother's name?
I always forget.
Why do we always do this? We were talking about this a few days ago, and I forgot what the brother's name was.
I didn't even write it down. Yeah, I know.
Sam and
Henry.
I always want to say Alex. I don't know why.
I keep wanting to say like Duncan for some reason. I like.
Duncan is like a brother name.
I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, Sam and Henry when you're walking around with them. Before
you get to the bullshit sniper sequence, which sucks because it's completely scripted. What? You mean a cinematic game has a fucking bullshit scripted sequence? Oh, imagine fucking that. But before that, the bit where you're walking around in like the subdivision and it's all these little houses and you can go into like 4 or 5 of them, I think. I love that sequence because man, I have some complaints, but Naughty Dog's got like a spot on world design. You know what I mean? Like they've progressed this from, they started it with like Jak and Daxter, where they were like, we are going to really like design the shit out of this world, and it's going to have its own unique feel, because that's what, I mean, Jak and Daxter has a very just feels like a place, like a real place, even with like PS2 technology behind it. You know what I mean?
Jak and Daxter, and then subsequently Jak 2 and Jak 3 are, but especially Jak and Daxter, like, everyone was ripping off that exact aesthetic and design for their platforming for years. That, like, off-center, like, imbalanced, like, wooden structures that are all elevated in, like, treetops, that kind of, like, vaguely tropical, but, like, not quite, like, jungle.
Yeah.
But, like, very much like tropical tree houses and, like, open air, like, huts and stuff. Was so many PS2 era mascot, like, games were ripping off that design.
Yeah, that exact design aesthetic, those character design aesthetics, you can see it when we were talking last week about, 2 weeks ago now. Like Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, you can just see, like, they're desperately trying to mash, like, Jak and Daxter as characters into one. You know what I mean? And so, but that's what Naughty Dog's been doing since then. They've really been working on refining the shit out of a specific idea of really building a place up to feel like an actual place.
And then you also look at, Uncharted, which is, the name of the game is going to beautiful locations and exploring these great ruins. And yeah, I playing the first Uncharted, I was like blown away, like, wow, these sets are really cool. These places are like really well done. And, that you can kind of feel like the attention they put into designing these things. And especially now that they have both those things under their belt, you get to The Last of Us. And yeah, it really does feel way more like a post-apocalyptic setting than its contemporaries at the time, which were like Fallout,
Right, yeah. And especially because, Bethesda... I mean, of course, this is 2 completely different scopes, and I have a lot of complaints with Bethesda, but I still think their open world design itself is pretty good, even though I think a lot of their, like, leveling stuff is stupid. I think their open world design itself is always really well done, because that's what they do. So it's 2 completely different scopes, but at the same time, The Last of Us was able to work on a smaller scale, and as such was able to make more of a real feeling place. And that's kind of what sells The Last of Us, is this, like, level of detail. The houses, the dorm rooms at the dorms are so good.
The dorms and, like, scattered suitcases full of, like, wrinkled clothes and stuff. Like, areas that are partitioned off. You can look at desks and see, like, notes and, like, junk, strewn about. That it's done in a very realistic way that looks like what would happen in a situation like this,
The town that Ish founded is so, like, really well thought out. This is the sewer city.
Yeah, the sewers, yeah.
The sewer town is so, like, well thought out. They really did sit down and they clearly went, like, well, how are these people getting their food? Where are they getting their water? And let's show all of this. Let's let people see, like, this world, so it doesn't feel. And this is, of course, people say like it doesn't feel video gamey, like it's a bad thing, and sometimes like a video game needs to feel like a video game. But if you are trying to sell your audience on an actual world, then you need to make it feel not like a video game, but like an actual place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a difference between like video gamey and like making this feel like a lived-in environment that makes the impact of the apocalypse that happened like more dramatic, and you really feel that that weight of like, well, here's all these signs of life, and there's no one left around.
Right. Yeah. It's like Mass Effect 2's chest-high walls, right?
Yeah.
Like when I say like video gamey, like when you know in Mass Effect 2 you're like, oh, this is a gameplay sequence because you just walked into an open room and it's full of chest-high walls that make no sense, and you're obviously supposed to take cover behind them. So it's like, oh, we just got ambushed. I totally didn't see that coming. Look at all these chest-high walls, Right.
Yeah.
It's the difference between that and like an actual world where people lived in, and like there are places for Joel to hide behind in The Last of Us, but it all feels convincing. It doesn't feel like it was placed there to like help the player out. It was placed there because that's just the way shit kind of fell over when, it's been 20 years since the apocalypse,
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk about it forever.
Also, stuff like the overgrowth and the fact that the city they go to is flooded because the sewer system has been failing for 20 years, and so that's what would happen, They did a really, it's the first of its kind to really show off, like, a quote-unquote, like, real apocalypse and what would really happen if, a city like that were to be abandoned, It's not like the desolation of Fallout or, other, like, zombie movies at the time where it's just like, oh, everything is dirty and it's all, the buildings are all just empty and decaying. Like, no, they showed, like, nature reclaiming, and then and it's very clear that you look at this and then you also look at Horizon, and it's like, you can see where Horizon was drawing a bit of influence in their apocalypse setting as well,
The Last of Us is definitely influential in a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways, and I definitely appreciate all of the obvious influence that The Last of Us had on Horizon, which was one of the best games of 2017, and maybe one of the better games of the PS4's like life cycle so far, just because of the level of work and detail that was put into it.
Yeah.
And you can tell Guerrilla was inspired, at least in part. I don't know when exactly development began on Horizon, but you can tell Guerrilla was inspired, at least in part, by the idea of, we've called it before, just in like our conversations, and I've seen it on Tumblr. It's called a soft apocalypse.
Yeah.
Where it's not like everything's blown away and obliterated, and it's like a fucking wasteland. Like Fallout is a hard apocalypse. The Last of Us and Horizon is a soft apocalypse where it's like, oh, nature is back and everything is green, and it feels kind of like more gentle, even if the world that you're existing in kind of sucks.
It's a death of humanity, but not of life on the planet, basically. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And that's a soft apocalypse, and I'm glad that The Last of Us kind of helped birth that aesthetic.
Yeah, it's the thing. The thing with The Last of Us is that and of that soft apocalypse idea is that is what baffled me. Whenever someone said, oh, if you like The Last of Us, you should watch The Road. Like...
Oh, no, don't ever watch The Road.
No, that's completely wrong. That's completely wrong, because the things that everyone likes about The Last of Us, its presentation, its overall design, the characters in it, that's not in The Road.
No.
It's very much not in The Road. You what draws people into The Last of Us is its use of color and its use of design, and that even these empty buildings that have been slowly decaying for years, it's because they're decaying because there's moss and trees growing in them now. There's this sense of life still existing, and that's not absolutely not present in The Road. And no,
God, there's nothing good in The Road. Oh God. Yeah. Oh God. I started the book The Road, and I got like 3 chapters in because my brother let me borrow it, and I went, nope.
Yeah, I watched like a half hour of the movie, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be it.
This is misery.
This is it the whole time. Okay, all right, never mind.
this is like a total non sequitur, and I'm sorry, but one of my friends, my supervisor at work, read Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. Holy shit. I read the fucking synopsis of Child of God on Wikipedia, and I needed to like go talk to a therapist. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
I wanted to kill myself after reading the synopsis for Child of God. Do not under any circumstances read Child of God, because it's about like a horrible necrophiliac hillbilly in like the Tennessee Valley. Oh god, Cormac McCarthy needs help.
Yeah.
But
I think he needs like a vacation, like a day off. God. Just like breathe, dude, breathe.
Smoke
it gets
some
better.
weed. I am begging you, Cormac McCarthy. Do some mushrooms. Do something, my friend, because you need it. And learn how to use quotation marks, you piece of shit. God.
Yeah, I tried reading the book too, and that bothered me too. I'm like, I get what he's going for, but like, it's not working for me.
It's not working. I'm sorry. This is why Cormac McCarthy is miserable, because he doesn't know how to use quotation marks. Anyways, that's an off-topic thing.
Yeah. But no, like everything about that is what makes The Last of Us stand out, and that's both really good because, you know, it shows this level of care and dedication they put into their game, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also bad because everything positive we're saying about it has nothing to do with actually picking up the controller and pushing buttons.
Playing. Yeah, it has everything that I like about The Last of Us has nothing, is not a video game. It's like, I guess, I'm of two minds about like the whole concept of taking a ton of money and throwing it at a game and making it this beautiful and fucking detailed as possible, right? Because on the one hand, like, man, I would just rather have like a game that I enjoy playing, like Horizon, you know? Like, I just really enjoy playing Horizon. But like the other thing is that like the promise of video games back in the 80s was that eventually you'd be able to kind of pick up a controller and go visit another place. And so games like Uncharted and The Last of Us are games that really let you do that. They let you kind of... The level of detail and work that's been put into The Last of Us is what sells you on this world. Like, without that level of detail, The Last of Us would not be as emotionally impactful as it is. You know?
Right. It's a double-edged sword, and we'll get more into that later on, you know, when we get more into this topic. But yeah, it's because you have to admire the dedication and the level of craft that goes into this.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, it says nothing about the actual core video game part.
And the core video game part of The Last of Us is just kind of like, okay.
It does the job.
Yeah.
There are hints of stuff I would have liked to expand on, and again, this will lead into more of a topic, but like, you know, the whole game is centered around like, the infected, the clickers use echolocation. They use a sort of sound-based radar to detect you, and as a counteract, you can kind of go into like a detection sense.
Yeah.
So that you can kind of like use that against them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing else that really makes Joel or Ellie stand out as like playable characters.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get that. I do. I don't know. I don't know.
What I'm saying is that, like, you compare this to, like, other games that were kind of released at the time. You say something like, say, Dishonored or Deus Ex, you know?
Yeah.
Which were both also stealth games, you know?
Right.
Both of them, and I'm not saying that Joel and Ellie need powers,
right,
you know, because that's what makes Deus Ex and Dishonored stand out, is that you're playing a game where you have abilities. But you also compare it to the stealth games that came earlier, like, say, Metal Gear Solid. Mm-hmm. Even playing a Solid Snake, you had options, and you had things that kind of made Snake stand out as a playable character.
Yeah.
That Joel and Ellie don't really have. They are ordinary people, you know?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the point, is that you're just supposed to be playing like a schmuck and a 14-year-old girl who are kind of in over their heads. But it doesn't make for like a great play experience. I feel like if you had a better suite of like shit to do stealthily, I would enjoy it more.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is that, like, you know, with that echolocation, like that radar sense you get,
mm-hmm.
expand a bit on that. Keep it within the realm of reality, because obviously that's what The Last of Us is. It's very grounded in reality,
Right.
Even the zombies in this game are based off of an actual fungus that does exist and does infect living creatures and does this exact same thing to them.
Right.
Which is terrifying, but, whatever. I don't like to think about that, but, the idea, what I got off of this is that Joel develops this ability, and it's probably an ability that other people in the world have, because they did it in response to their enemy,
Right.
You can continue on that path and give Joel other skills that will make him a better, adversary against this world, against these infected.
Yeah. Just to give it a better sense of progression, I guess.
Better sense of progression, a better sense of identity,
Yeah.
Here is what Joel can do in this game that you won't see in another zombie game,
Right. Yeah, I get that completely.
Yeah.
It would help kind of make it a more enjoyable play experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's something like, I don't know, I guess actually I think The Last of Us came out around the same time The Walking Dead show started as well.
Yeah.
Around that, they're on their 6th, 7th season, so yeah, it would be around that time.
Yeah, it's all kind of the same idea of Game of Thrones, these very dark universes.
But the idea being that I'm saying is give Joel something that Rick can't do.
Right.
Yeah. And that just helps make that world feel more unique. And it's already a very unique world, but it just adds that extra flavor to the characters themselves, not just the world, and also adds to the gameplay to make that stand out more.
Yeah. I wish that and now that we're kind of talking about it more, my thing is less Joel or Ellie's abilities to function in a stealth scenario, but more tools available to be stealthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can feel that.
I wish there were more, and part of it is that I don't think The Last of Us has a great control scheme. It's kind of utilitarian, but it's also
serviceable, but there's, like I said, there's nothing that, when you pick up the controller, you can enjoy playing the game, but, you will not feel that level of, oh, wow, this is really responsive. This is,
right.
The way Joel feels.
And also, it's kind of just because they have buttons that do a lot of different things, and it's a hard thing to kind of articulate without me having it more fresh in my mind. But what I mean is to say, more, I wish there had been more, trap options. I wish there had been more options that function kind of like the nail bomb, but could do different things. I can feel that, yeah. I just wish there were more ways to kind of mitigate a situation, tie down clickers temporarily or something like that. Leg traps, things like that.
Right. I feel that. Yeah, something that kind of helps you navigate an area in a stealth way.
Right, and so that way, when you do inevitably have your stealth game cock up cascade, you if you've been playing it well, then these things you set out, traps and things like that, will help kind of mitigate the swarm of things that always kind of descends on you when things go wrong. So it would be kind of a way of rewarding good play. Is if you've been stealthy enough, then that means you've been sneaking around all of these people and these infected. You've been setting up these traps, and so that way you can kind of lure them into this stuff, and it's not just it's really just the bomb that acts as a trap, and that's not really kind of the you're trying to get this sense that you're playing a sneaky asshole character.
No. Now let me ask, because I don't remember actually. I don't remember what all your tools at your disposal were. Mm-hmm. Was there anything say Left 4 Dead had the pipe bomb, where you would throw it down and it would make a noise? Was there anything in The Last of Us that actually drew attention to another location?
There was. I mean, you could throw bottles and bricks.
Yeah, but I'm talking there wasn't any sort of
no, a beeping thing.
Yeah, a car alarm or a smoke alarm that you could set off.
No,
because
I did learn you can kind of do that with bow and arrow. You can shoot a wall, and a bunch of things will go after that instead. But that's the same thing as the brick and the bottle.
And again, that would make it stand out more because every stealth game has like, oh, throw a rock or throw a bottle around to distract, to draw attention. Like everything does it. Metal Gear Solid does that. Like having it be an item that you like, a craftable item.
Yeah.
That would like fit in this world would make it stand out and be more unique. Tying a smoke alarm around like a lighter.
Yeah,
and then you just pitch both of them into the fray, and then it goes off. Something like that.
Yeah, and that because, like, if you can, like, the idea clickers navigate and find you via sound, right? Like, if you make noise, they're going to find you. So why don't I have some kind of tool that makes a lot of sound, and that way it, like, overloads their senses, and you can use that to maybe gain an advantage, but, make it
disorients them or whatever. Maybe they aren't drawn to it, but, like, you can throw it down and it'll draw a lot of attention, but they won't be able to pinpoint your location, something like that.
It gives you a half second more to shiv them or get past them or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Like, there are little things like that would have made it feel more unique, because as it is, like, the general suite of tools you have at your disposal are super rudimentary. There's nothing that's, like, really, really stand out, except... nothing.
Yeah, not really.
I was trying to like think of like one thing.
You get the flamethrower that you put together.
That's kind of neat.
But that's about it. It's not. It's not. There's nothing like that. Like really stands out. There's nothing like you can look at like say Horizon and be like, oh, that weapon was really cool, and I had it was one of the things about Horizon that I enjoyed is that you can. I was more compelled to switch up my inventory and find out different gadgets and stuff to use, traps and whatnot. And then The Last of Us just doesn't have that variety. And again, they are going for a more like realistic, grounded setting, but you can still explore options within that.
Yeah, because if you don't, you have this bad situation where you've made a $60 game that people don't want to go back and replay. I have no interest in going back and replaying The Last of Us anytime soon. I should have before we did this talk. I should have played the DLC. I just didn't have the time. I didn't really just get around, and I just didn't really have the motivation. I was just thinking, like, I really, as much as I like Ellie as a character, I really just did not have the motivation to go back and play more of The Last of Us after having played games of a similar cut that I just enjoyed more,
Right, yeah.
It just didn't appeal to me. It was more cinematic stuff, and I'm just like, I can watch those cutscenes on YouTube if I felt compelled, and I ended up not doing it, which is a shame, but at the same time, it's just kind of that's kind of how Naughty Dog makes games now, and I don't know, it's kind of a shame.
They've really gotten away from the mascot platformer, and they've delved way more into these cinematic approaches for their games. And
please make a Jak 4 that doesn't suck.
Yeah, make like a real Jak. Like, oh god, did you see the Jak concept art for the reboot?
No.
Oh, I need to show you that. Like, it's these, like, much more realistic designs that Naughty Dog was pitching around.
Are they good or are they bad?
They're bad.
Oh, no!
I mean, imagine if Daxter looked like a real otter.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, Naughty Dog, no, anything but that. My God.
Because, like we said in the mascot episode, the charm of Jak and Daxter is that they have these really great, dynamic, cartoony designs.
Yeah, they have. I mean, the designs in that game are so solid to this day.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah, like a reboot that makes them more realistic looking would be awful.
Awful. Oh, I didn't know you meant like that kind of realism. I thought meant like no. I don't like.
No, I'm not talking like realistic fur texture like Ratchet has now, or like you see on like like Mario's like weird realistic mustache now. No, I'm talking like. We have redesigned their proportions to look like real animals.
Nope, I don't like it. Nope. I'm
it's
good.
real bad.
That's real bad.
So yeah, thank God they didn't do that.
Thank God, but I mean, still, I really desperately we can't do this. Otherwise, I'll be talking about Jak and Daxter when I should be talking about The Last of Us because I love those fucking games. We need to do an episode on that ASAP.
We do.
But
so that's just like their thing, and like again, like there is a lot of good bits in The Last of Us. characters like Ish, the set design, the fun interactions between these characters. Like, Bill is a great character.
The acting is, like, top notch.
Oh, it's really good, and I think a lot of that is part of because they mocapped themselves, like, in a set, you know?
Yeah, they mocapped themselves, and they did the lines during mocap. It wasn't like they recorded in a sound booth, and then they did the mocap. They recorded both at the same time, and that really, really helps.
You get a lot of really great line readings. There's a lot of great direction in here. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, like, fun stuff happening in the background. The crux of the game is Joel and Ellie, and that's the selling point, is that you get to know these two characters. And for all of my complaints about The Last of Us, they really do sell you on these two characters just beautifully. Yeah. You know? That's just, all of it is just so well done. It's what's really nice about the direction of these cutscenes, and why, like, you know, not just cutscenes, but also in the gameplay, you know, the fact that Joel and Ellie have tons of conversations in the middle of, like, while you're exploring something. Mm-hmm. You know, there's recurring conversations they go back to, like Ellie reading from the joke book, or asking questions about, like, all these different, like, old world things that she runs into.
Right.
You know, and then you also get really good cutscene design where it's, you know, because it's not, like, shot A, shot B, mm-hmm. And it's usually there's more than two characters.
Yeah.
So you have, like, you can have multiple conversations happening at the same time between, like, three characters.
Right.
And it's just very effective that way.
Yeah, it just feels, feels very, like, smooth and natural, you know?
Yeah, they do a good job of, like, you know, selling their relationship throughout the year that they're together, and why Joel would be attached to her.
Yeah, and just... They make you really feel for these characters, and I mean, like, the writing itself is pretty dang good for a video game.
It's sharp and witty, and, like, you know, it's all even the in-game, like, even in the in-game, like, banter between the two of them is just, like, mm-hmm. the fact that it's all, like, context sensitive, and, like, it's just these fun little conversations between the two of them. It's great, and the fact that a lot of it does take place during gameplay is helpful, because it creates, you know, this kind of, like, wandering conversation between the two of them. Like, they're not stopping to talk and then back to silent gameplay.
Right. It helps fill the space, and is what makes it feel kind of like you're really on, like, an adventure with this other person, and it just gives this good sense of, like, progression, I guess, between people.
Yeah, I mean, and stuff like, there's, like, a few times where, like, you're wandering to advance in this area, you know, you're moving stuff around. You'll turn around, Ellie isn't there. Ellie's in a different room looking at something.
Yeah, and then you kind of have, like, that really organic feeling of, like, you know, like, oh god, where's the kid? Go find the kid.
She's not, like, doing something. You know, she's not, like, glued to you like a companion in, say, like, Fallout. Or, like, Mass Effect or Dragon Age or something like that, where, like, you know, they have, like, a radius where they don't get too far from you.
Right, and Ken Levine desperately tried to copy that concept and failed miserably.
Yeah.
I'll never miss an opportunity to talk shit about BioShock Infinite.
Right.
You know this.
Yep.
Sad dad games every time. If somebody's going to talk about a sad dad game, I'm like, ooh, let's talk shit about BioShock Infinite for half second. But yeah, you know, Ellie, I mean, like, that is, like, the major selling point of The Last of Us. Pretty much everybody acknowledges this now, like, years out, that, like, the big point is the world design, the characters themselves, the story, which is really good. I mean, it's nothing, like, brand new, but, again, because there is, you know, some influence from the road and stuff like that. But it tells its story well, and it tells its story in kind of a way that video games at the time hadn't really done before. And so it all kind of meshed, and you know, these days, 5 years out, it still feels kind of dated, but there are parts of it that really sing. And I mean, like there's a handful of sequences that I did, like, genuinely love. Like the winter sequence, When, like, Ellie's... The whole thing with David and everything.
Yes, the winter chapter was really good.
Winter is really, really good. Like, really, really good.
Everything about, like, playing as Ellie and then switching back to Joel and then also to Ellie, like, simultaneously.
Yeah, that was really fun.
The playing in the blizzard was great.
Right.
That was a great, like, push to make that stealth more dynamic and more dramatic, you know?
The only thing, and this is such a nitpick for a sequence that otherwise I did, like, genuinely love. My only nitpick is that during that blizzard sequence, there needed to be, in that first area, like when you first escape David and you're, like, making a run for it, there needed to be in one of those buildings a map on a wall. Not like a map you can carry with you, because that's too hand-holdy, and I get it. It's supposed to be, like, panicked, right? You're supposed to, like, not know where you're going. But I needed some kind of map on the wall to be like, this is where you are, this is where you need to be. You know what I mean? Because I was, like, running in circles in a few places. I'm like, where the fuck am I? And I guess that's, again, kind of the point, but, like, a little bit of, like, a nudge for the player to be like, no, you need to go this way is always good. And that was the only thing I hated about that fucking blizzard sequence, is because I had no idea where the fuck I was most of the time.
Also, I want to draw attention real quick just to that cutscene, because it's very notable. The cutscene where Joel is torturing those two guys...
Man!
That was good.
Shit's brutal.
Oh,
like that acting is so. You keep going back to it. Like a lot of things about The Last of Us didn't wow me, but boy, Troy Baker is really good at what he does.
Yeah. But like that, you know, just again, like the line reading where, like, you know, he kills the one guy and the other guy's like, no, that's it, and he's like, and Joel's like, I believe him.
Yeah,
That's
don't
okay.
worry, I believe it. And then he just, oh shit. Yeah. Oh man, that part was so brutal, and I kind of loved it. Yeah, yeah, it was pretty great. And just like all those little moments. I mean, there's so many great like moments like that I wish I enjoyed playing The Last of Us more.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing where, like, you know, and again, like it's a double-edged sword again, because, you know, we're gonna get salty about this much later, but like these are cool moments, and they're undoubtedly really cool things, and they're notable things, but the fact that they work out of context in general doesn't help The Last of Us as a whole product, you know?
Right, because it's ultimately still a video game, and the problem is if you could, like, take most of The Last of Us and turn it into a YouTube movie, and you wouldn't really, like, miss out on anything, it kind of sucks.
So, like, that all said, there is something I've been waiting, like, 5 years to talk about. Because this is
specifically with me.
Specifically with you, yeah. And like this has been like on my fucking mind for 5 years. And this is a game that I played when it came out, and I thoroughly enjoyed it at the time. And I've just been fucking sitting on this and waiting for my fucking chance to talk about it.
And you had to wait till it went on fucking PSN sale.
Yep.
And then not even that. Just to draw this out even more, not only that, it went on PSN sale, I bought it for like $5, and then I didn't play it for like a year and a half. And I think I was like, I had to wait until like, you weren't around, none of my friends were available on a weekend, you were on vacation, and like none of my other friends were available that weekend, and like my family was all busy, and like the weather sucked shit. So, like, everything coalesced to where... And I had nothing new to play. So I'm, like, laying around in my house, and I'm, like fucking around on my PS4, and I'm like, I should buy a new game. And then I literally went, wait a second, I have The Last of Us. And then I finally played the fucking Last of Us. It took 5 years and one really bored-ass weekend, but I did it, and now we can finally talk about the ending.
Yeah. Okay, so... This is the ending stuff now. So if you haven't played it,
stuff.
this is the heavy stuff.
Like, and here's the thing: the game is cheap. You can get it on PSN these days for like $15, even like not on sale, and it's short. So like, if even for all the things I've been saying about like gameplay and stuff, I'm at the point now where like the investment like, the amount of money you invest in it versus the amount of time you put into it, I think is a good trade-off. Like, I would not tell anybody to buy this game for $60. But if you can get it for $15, fuck yeah, go play The Last of Us, you know?
The thing is, like, again, this is kind of like a mark against it, but, like, pay what you would pay for a movie for The Last of Us.
Yeah, ooh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's like cost you slightly more than going to see a movie during like Pride time.
Yeah.
So like a movie ticket's like what, $12 now?
Yeah.
So go see The Last of Us, or go play The Last of Us. The same thing. Fuck it. And if you spend $15 to $20 on it, then you get your money's worth. You know.
Yeah.
Never pay more than $20 for a computer game. Thanks, Monkey Island. Translates to $36.50. Anyways.
Now, all that to be said, why are you booing him? He's right.
You've waited so long for this.
Joel was right.
Is the title card going to be Joel's head on Hannibal Buress?
Yes, the title card says it all. Why are you booing him? He's right. He was right. Fucking right.
Joel was
right.
Technically right. Joel was a huge asshole about it and shouldn't have left Ellie at the end. But Joel was right.
Joel is a garbage man. Don't get me wrong. He is a garbage boy stink man. He's a terrible, terrible person. The whole game is about how humans suck shit. Okay? The whole game is that humans are bad.
Yeah.
Alright? And so, when the Fireflies kidnap Ellie and they're like, we're gonna scoop out Ellie's brain, Joel was right to murder them all.
Joel, because here's the thing, okay? Like, fucking, and I keep referencing this dude, and I'm sorry, but Joel, fuck, the other one, Joe Anderson. His like 4-hour long video on The Last of Us, Jesus Christ, or on like Naughty Dog games in general, like, he says it perfectly. Like, the Fireflies are clowns, man. Like, the Fireflies have no resources, they have no personnel, they only have one fucking specimen of a person who's immune to the fucking cordyceps disease, right? Like, yeah. One specimen, right? They don't run any tests, they don't do any kind of observation. They don't see if, like, maybe they could biopsy, like a teeny piece of her brain or whatever.
Yeah.
No. They're just immediately like, let's cut this fucking kid's head open, scoop her brain bits out, and then make ourselves a fucking, like, cure. Okay, well, let's say that does work. You have no personnel, you have no resources, like I just said, you have no distribution network.
Yeah.
How are you going to, if you do somehow magically manage to synthesize a cure out of this kid, how are you going to distribute your cure?
How are you going to replicate it? How are you going to distribute it? Like, how are you going to keep track of it?
So, how are you going to mass produce it?
Yeah, how are you going to produce more of this when you only have one sample to start with and you don't have the resources to replicate it? How are you going to keep track of your shipments to make sure they get to the right location?
How are you going to, I don't know, like, make sure it gets in the right... Because, like, here's the thing. The Fireflies are, like, a teeny tiny group at this point. Like, they've been totally decimated by assholes. I get that. People suck. That's the whole point of The Last of Us. But, like, how are you going to make sure that it gets in the right hands? Because if you are just like, hey, we're the Fireflies and we made a cure, like, every fucking gang in America is going to show up on your door and be like, give it to us, because now we're going to be in charge.
Oh, the first convoy of cure shipments is going out. Oh, they got 20 miles in and raiders ambushed them, and now they are holding the cure ransom for all the food and everything and resources and supplies. Oh,
no.
Oh, now no one can have it.
Now no one can have it, and we killed our only resource to make a cure.
That's okay, we'll just make more. We can't make more because we only had one starting sample.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Idiots. And I don't think this is bad. I don't think it's bad writing on Naughty Dog's part. Okay?
No, it's not.
I don't think that, like, they didn't think the whole Fireflies thing. This is not me saying, like, Naughty Dog didn't think this through and they are trying to, like, say that the Fireflies were right. You know what I mean? I don't think that. I'm saying that Naughty Dog thought of all of this and was like, we are going to, like, create, like, a moral conundrum for these players, and, you know, ultimately Joel is right, but this is still fucked up, there's a lot of bad shit going on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all supposed to be more morally gray than that, but, you know, like, Joel is a bad man, but the Fireflies are also assholes, or even, like... Here's my thing, okay? Like, let's say, fine, the Fireflies somehow magically have all of the resources to create and distribute and protect this cure, right?
Right.
Like, let's just pretend. They don't, but let's pretend. So, you really, like, you could have literally just taken Joel, this man who you know to be a bad man who's really good at hurting people, right?
Right.
Like, you know for a fact that he's good at it because he somehow magically got all the way from Boston to Salt Lake City still alive, with a whole country between them full of assholes. So you know that Joel is a badass. You just throw him out on his ass? That at no point did anybody go, like, we'll let you see Ellie under, like, heavy guard because we know you're a scary badass, and then, like, you explain the situation to Ellie, and it's obvious that Ellie was okay. I mean, like, she's 14, so she can't technically consent, but whatever, she's also living in, like, a fucked up version of the future, right?
No, here's the other reason why Joel is wrong. Disregarding all that, disregarding the complete lack of resources, no one asked Ellie.
Nobody asked Ellie, and that's the thing, if you had, like, literally just asked Ellie, been like, hey, this, because, like, they make it sound like they saved Ellie and they immediately put her under.
Because when Ellie wakes up in the car, she has no idea what's happened. That's why Joel is able to lie to her, because she was unconscious the entire time.
Right. So at no point did you, like, wake the kid up and, like, okay, yeah, she's 14, so she can't technically consent to anything, but like I said, it's a little different when you've been growing up in, like, Nightmare World. So you could, like, actually sit this kid down and be like, listen, this is what's gonna happen, this is how we're gonna do it, and this is what's gonna happen to you. Right? And
right.
The thing is that, judging by the way Ellie's been talking the whole game, her answer probably would have been, okay, do it. You know what I mean?
But they didn't ask.
Because they're huge assholes. And so you could have, like, asked Ellie and then been like, hey, we're going to take Joel to Ellie and she's going to explain it to him and it's going to suck, but if she's cool with it, and they have kind of created this bond, and they obviously have, and even, what's her fuck? What's the chick? The lady from Boston who sent you on the job?
Tess?
No, not Tess.
Not Tess. The other one.
The other one.
Who's there? God.
I want to say her name is, like, Miranda or something, but I know I'm wrong.
What's her name? I think I'm looking at Marlene.
I knew it was an M. Cool.
Yeah.
Marlene. So, you know, Marlene, like, knows, she even tells Joel to his face, like, yeah, I know you two have bonded because I've also bonded with Ellie, blah, 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 bitch. Like, you could have, like, taken Joel to Ellie because Marlene can see that they've bonded and been like, Ellie can explain it. And it would be horrible and painful and sad, but by God, if Ellie's consenting to it, then maybe it's the right thing to do. It's still not the right thing to do, but I mean, there are so many ways you could have gone about this instead of being the biggest assholes imaginable.
What it all boils down to is that, again, it's not a fault of the Naughty Dog's writers. I think this is their intent in this situation.
Yeah.
Because it's not so much whether or not Joel should have saved Ellie, because it's clear, for one thing, not only are the Fireflies understaffed, they are they have no resources and no means of distribution. It's very clear, because you get that note from Marlene, that, like, audio diary from her. Mm-hmm. It's very clear she wants to be a martyr without actually sacrificing anything.
Yeah. She wants to be, like, a hero without actually having to do any of the work.
Because her whole thing talks about it, like, the anguish she's going in and, like, the decision whether or not to sacrifice Ellie. But they never consult Ellie on it.
Yeah, they never ask Ellie, and she's like, she apologizes to, I guess it's implied to be Ellie's mom, you know? Like, there's that audio diary where she apologizes to Anna, I think her name is.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sorry, your daughter is going to see you soon. Fucking really? You didn't wake your kid up first?
It reminds me, this is going to be so weird, it reminds me of the line, one of my favorite lines from Shrek, which is Lord Farquaad going, some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And that's what Marlene is.
You're so right.
She wants to be the martyr. She wants to have this dramatic situation, but she doesn't want to actually give up anything on her own. Because she's afraid of Ellie saying no.
Yeah, and so like if Ellie says no, then that's like a huge like moral issue for her, because if she really believes in like this whole cause of like saving the world from the cordyceps disease, then that means she's going to have to murder this 14-year-old. And like she's not willing to make that choice, you know? But Joel fucking is. Joel's willing to make that evil ass choice because, you know, it's not fucking right, but neither are... I mean, everybody in this situation is an asshole.
Yeah.
So, you know, fuck it. I'm siding with the guy who at least is, like, more in it for himself than these people who have, like, this fucking martyr complex who think they're gonna save the world and probably make it fucking worse.
And, it all boils down to the simple fact that from the get-go, from the very beginning of the game, it shows you that the issue with this situation is not the monsters, it's with the people. Because what kills Sara?
It's other people.
It's a guy who is not thinking clearly with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Sara dies. Sara isn't bitten. She's not infected.
Right.
It's pointed immediately at humanity, and so that's why this cure isn't worth the sacrifice. If they could get a cure out without Ellie dying, then go for it. Mm-hmm. Take the shot. You know.
Yeah.
But it's not worth killing someone over.
Right, because there's no guarantee of it actually working. Like, and if you fuck it up, then you're fucked, you know?
Right.
Are you cutting out?
It all boils down to that.
Yeah, okay, you cut out a little bit there.
Okay, I didn't say, I said that it all just boils down to the simple fact that, like, it's humanity's fault, and the infected are not the core of the problem, and so unless you can deal with humanity as a whole first, then it doesn't matter. Right.
So, whatever. You're right. Why are you booing Joel? He's right.
Now that all being said, was
Joel's
Joel
still
right?
An asshole for lying to Ellie.
Yeah, lying to Ellie was a dick move, and that's kind of what will lead into a later point afterwards, which is whether or not Ellie understands why Joel did what he did, or is okay with it, or what. Because like you said, it's kind of implied that Ellie would have been willing to sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
You know, when you get to the area and you get to spring finally, you know, she is suddenly very quiet. She's not having the fun that she was earlier. She's
at least marginally aware that things probably aren't going to go well for her, because after they have the moment with the giraffes, which is like the best scene of the game, because giraffes are the best. Mm-hmm. I'm obsessed with giraffes, by the way, if you're listening. I'm obsessed with giraffes. They're the best animal ever. So that whole sequence for me, I was just like, oh my god, this is the best. All of that said, after the end of the sequence, Joel's like, we can go back, and Ellie's like, no, we can't.
Yeah.
We can't go back after everything you did and everything I did. She's like, she kind of has a feeling that she's dreaming about dying, and she's dreaming about flying.
Right.
And so she kind of has a sense that things aren't going to go great for her, but she thinks that it's worth it, because, one, she's 14, and she, ultimately, wants to do she's a good kid. Unlike Joel, Ellie is 14 and is still mostly a good kid.
Right.
She wants to do the right thing. She wants to help people. She wants to give Henry toys. She wants to do the right thing in a world that kind of doesn't want to let her do the right thing. And so she thinks that her life isn't worth more than, all of these people's lives. And technically she's right. I mean, that's, a whole other philosophical question. But, in an ideal situation where, you could distribute a cure and blah, 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 everything we've been talking about. Her life isn't worth all of these other people's lives, and that's tragic, but that's just kind of the way it is sometimes.
Right, yeah.
And so she's, aware of it.
Now, the problem is, like we said, the reason that Marlene does not consult Ellie on it is because she's afraid Ellie will say no.
Right.
The reason that Joel lies to Ellie is because he's afraid Ellie would have said yes.
Yeah, and he's afraid, you know...
He's afraid of losing.
She's gonna leave him. I mean, if he tells the truth, then she's gonna leave. She's gonna try and find some way to do what she was trying to do. You know what I mean?
that's what he's afraid of. And you know, at the very end of the game, she has that. She just says okay after she you know asks like, was that true? You know?
Yeah.
And the point is that, like Joel, who is not sure what Ellie would have done, you as players aren't sure what that okay is supposed to mean.
Yeah, you don't know where they stand anymore. You don't know, like, if she trusts him the way she used to.
Is she saying okay because she accepts the lie as true? Right. Is she saying okay because she accepts that Joel is lying to her, but he's lying because he wants to protect her, and she can't give herself up, you know, without thinking about, like, what it'll do to him? Right. You know, like, she would probably have given herself up if she didn't have anyone like relying on her. You know, Joel has a thing where it's like you find something to cling to.
Yeah.
You know, and so like now that, you know, was her saying okay, like she's angry that he lied to her, but she understands that he kind of needs her.
Right.
Or was she saying okay because okay, I can't trust you anymore?
Right, yeah, like that's the whole kind of the final unanswered question, and it's that tension. It's the spinning top at the end of Inception, right?
Yeah.
It's ending your story with a note of uncertainty to kind of give players and viewers something to think about.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be a neat... Like, the whole point of The Last of Us is that this isn't a neat story with clear-cut morals and happy endings and everything just kind of making sense. You know, like, the whole point of The Last of Us is that life and people are, like, messy and it's awful sometimes and you make compromises. Like, that's the theme of, like, The Last of Us.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the ending of the game is supposed to reflect everything that you've just left behind. Moral uncertainty, the idea of who can you trust, the idea of having a good life and living, and what is it worth? Like, what is your life worth, and what is, like, what are you willing to do, and what are you willing to accept, right? Because, like, David and his cult, they're willing to accept eating people and pedophilia in order to have, like, a quote-unquote comfortable life. You know, all of these things. That is what the game is about.
Yeah.
And so that uncertainty is something you kind of have to ask yourself, which leads into The Last of Us doesn't need a sequel.
Yeah, The Last of Us does not need a sequel because the sequel ruins that by showing that Ellie and Joel are still hanging out. And, like, maybe they'll have that confrontation, they'll have that talk, like, you know, near the end of the game when they're, like, surrounded by clickers and they're mad at each other, and Ellie will start yelling at him about lying to her. Maybe, but the simple fact that we see them still interacting means that she sticks with him for at least 5 years.
Or however old she is in The
Yeah,
Last of Us.
she looks like she's, like, in her mid-20s, so yeah, like 5 to 10 years, she still hangs out with him. So, at the very least, that means that they are still... She cares about him enough to stick with him. She might resent him, but that doesn't mean doesn't resent him enough to leave, which is one of the possible outcomes that could have happened with that ambiguous ending.
So now you've just kind of, like, screwed up, like, your ambiguity of, like, the ending of your first game, and it's like, The Last of Us doesn't need a sequel, just make a new game, Naughty Dog. You know?
Right.
Or set it somewhere else in the world. I don't know.
Now here is the other problem with the sequel we have right now, and this is a kind of a good transition to what we're going to talk about later. Mm-hmm. We have 2 trailers for The Last of Us 2.
Right.
There's been no gameplay.
We have not seen the way this game... And arguably, that's because all Naughty Dog, you know, put my face on top of Hannibal Buress, all Naughty Dog games is the same.
Yeah. Now, possibly. But the simple fact is, okay, the first trailer was cool. It's like, oh, shit, they are making The Last of Us 2. Ellie says, like, they're gonna pay, like... Someone has wronged them. Okay, that's kind of intriguing. Alright, we'll see where that goes. Like, the Fireflies are dead. Who else could she have a grudge against?
Is she talking about Joel? Is she talking
Well, she's saying it to Joel, so, like...
yeah, who fucking knows?
Yeah,
you know?
So, okay, alright. And then the second trailer comes out, and it's a bunch of characters that we have never seen before, and they are not talking about anything important.
Right.
It's two characters being, like, strung up and hung, and, like, about to be executed or whatever, and then, like, clickers show up at the end. And nothing about that trailer says The Last of Us until clickers show up.
Right.
It could be a Walking Dead game. It could be a... What's the one that's coming out?
DayZ?
Not DayZ, the other one that, like, we saw at E3 last year.
Oh, it's not DayZ, but it's
Like,
that other zombie
Left
game.
Behind, or, like...
The fucking one by the guys who made Siphon
Bubsy.
Filter? And
No,
Bubsy?
the ones who made Bubsy 3D, yeah, that one.
It's
like,
I think it's the same team.
It is the same team, yeah, but, like...
Days Gone, not DayZ.
Days Gone, yeah, Days Gone.
Again,
like,
all of these games blur the fuck together. Because it's
could-
just two zombie games with the same fucking title.
It could be that, like, it's okay, well, these guys are wearing, like, contemporary modern clothes, but they're, like, beating each other up with rudimentary weapons and, like, stringing each other up. Like, okay, it's a post-apocalyptic game. Oh, the last 2 seconds show us that it is The Last of Us.
Great.
I didn't care.
I don't care. It'll be another 5 years before we talk about the fucking Last of Us 2, because I'm going to wait for it to go to be $5 on the PlayStation Network as well, you know what I mean?
And this is what ties into the other side of the topic we wanted to talk about, and why, even though we've done a lot of praising for The Last of Us and its use of, like, you know, cinematics and its use of set location and all that.
I'm so fucking tired of cinematic games.
I am so tired of games trying to be movies. And I've said this before. I've said this, like, several times in the podcast. And it's a philosophy I stick with, too. I don't care about cinematic trailers.
No.
I don't get excited for a trailer that is just cutscene.
Yeah.
I don't care. I want to know how this game is going to play. What are you going to do with the controller that will impress me, you know?
Yeah, like, how am I going to play this video game? You know, that thing that you do? You play video games? There's, like, stuff you do. You press buttons and then shit happens on the screen?
Yeah.
You know?
What are you going to do with your gameplay that will make it stand out to compare to its contemporaries, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't care about fucking movies. I mean, like, I like movies, but, like, I don't watch movies nearly as much as I play video games, because I like the act of playing things more than I like the act of watching things, you know?
Like, ever since I think we started Indie Week, and maybe even way before that, but, like, you and I have hammered this point over and over, like, every time it stands out, which is doing things that you can do with video games that you can't do with other forms of media.
Yeah, this past year especially, 2017 was great for it. And again, I finally played Undertale. I played Nier Automata, which are, like, the two biggest, like, this is what video games are made for kind of games. You know, I've been playing, all kinds of things that let you realize, like, oh shit, right, like, this is what video games are for. They're not here to tell contemporary stories. That's not their purpose. That's not... If you tell me a story that's just like a standard movie story, like The Last of Us, in the form of a video game, like, yeah, if it's well told, cool, but I don't care. Like, it doesn't stick with me in the same way.
I appreciate it as a story, but I don't appreciate it as a game, which means that your game failed.
Yeah.
To be a game. Like... It's this overall thing where it's like, you know, it's this self, like, you're hurting yourself, because you see this push all the time with game journalism and with interviews with, like, game developers and stuff, where it's like, you had that one fucking quote from the new voice actor for Kratos, speaking of God of War. This is going to be a target for that, where he's like, I looked at the script for God of War, and it's like, oh, this isn't a game script. This is a real script.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
We're here to play video games. We're not here to watch a fucking movie or hear you, like...
What does real script mean? What does that mean? Like...
They mean movie script.
Yeah.
Everybody desperately wants to make movies.
The problem is game journalists and, like, game reviewers are desperate to have games be treated as a legitimate source of storytelling.
Right. Which they are, but the problem is that they conflate it with cinematic.
The problem is their push for it is to treat games more like movies. They want to be movies, and that's sabotage.
Because it's not the whole point.
Yeah, the point is games like Nier and Undertale and like Night in the Woods and Her Story. These games that exist as games because that's the best way to explain this story to an audience, to have them feel that kind of thing. Her Story, like, I think Her Story especially is one of the best examples of this can only work as a game. It can't work as a book, it can't work as a movie, it can't work as a play, you know?
Right.
It only works when you are the one exploring these snippets of story and pasting them together.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it can't be told any other way. And part of the experience of the story is the interaction with the interface, right? Part of what makes, like, what gives Her Story kind of its charm, even though, like, it isn't, like, the greatest game ever made, is, like, what makes it kind of stick out and feel memorable is that you're interacting with, like, an old piece of technology. And so, like I said, when we were talking about exploring houses in The Last of Us, these good video games take you and they put you somewhere else and they make you feel like you are in another place and you could only be experiencing this thing through the medium of video games, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, like, cinema is something completely different. You're not there to experience a place, you're there to experience, like, a story. And the storytelling mechanics, the ideas in movies and video games are completely different. And so if you try to make your video game more like a movie, then it's not a video game.
Yeah,
you're hurting the video game side of your fucking video game.
Yeah, you are hurting your argument at legitimizing video games, you know?
Right. If you're so desperate to, like, review video games and make review movies and make movies, then go fucking make movies. Don't waste our time with making video games that are like movies, you know?
And this is also the push that you see all the time, which is like, oh god, I can't wait until they make a Last of Us movie, or I can't wait until they make a Metroid movie or a Zelda movie. Like, why do you want that? What will be done in the movie that can't be done in the game?
Because it's just telling the same story. I mean, like, if they don't tell the exact same story, then the movie, as an adaptation, has, like, kind of failed. I mean, yeah, you can adapt it in a way that makes it work. But, like, for one, if you want a Last of Us movie, just go watch fucking Logan.
Yeah, basically.
It's the same fucking movie. And it's like, if you want this story in the form of a movie, then maybe video games aren't for you. Right.
Looking at you, David Cage.
And all of these people given... I mean, I don't care how good God of War is. I mean, it could be great. I mean, you could press those fucking buttons and everything just works. You know what I mean? It just works. But, like, I don't care.
Now, it's not
the point.
Here's the problem. This is actually a really great example. There's, like, 4, like, big, like, cinematic games that we can kind of talk about. There's a perfect example of this. There's The Last of Us. There's Uncharted, there's Tomb Raider, and there's God of War. Right? So, especially what I want to look at is, like, Tomb Raider and God of War, because, like I said earlier, like one of the problems with cinematic gameplay is that you develop these protagonists that have no defining features anymore, like, defining abilities, you know?
Yeah.
Well, you look at Lara and Kratos in their previous games.
Right.
You know, Lara was obviously still a normal human, you know, she was very athletic and stuff, but you know what? She was filthy rich, and she had all this crazy access to technology and all that, and she had her she was fucking doing backflips with dual pistols out, and like shooting up enemies, you know, in you know, doing these side flips and all this crazy acrobatic shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Kratos, who what the fuck couldn't Kratos do, you know?
Yeah, like, man, like, the first I have only played like one Tomb Raider game. That being said, I played the shit out of God of War when it first came out, and like, no, God of War is not fucking art. But you know what God of War is? It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's different. It was an American take on Japanese character action games, and for all of its flaws, like its over-reliance on like manly titties and action, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's still pretty fucking fun to play, even after like, 10, 12, however many years it's been. It felt unique. It was loud and bombastic, and it had, like its biggest like draw were these huge boss fights, and you were doing crazy moves, and you had cool attacks, and it just all kind of, it worked, everything clicked into place, and you were playing it, and you were having fun, and you were seeing like really cool, unique things, and the design aesthetic of the first 3 games is actually pretty solid, even with its over-reliance on like tits and manly man bullshit. But it felt fun, and it felt unique, and it wasn't art, it wasn't cinematic, but it was still pretty cool little like note in video game history.
That was its signature. That was what defined it. That's what made it stand out, compared to other action games. And it's the same thing where like the old Lara Croft she was witty, and she was shouting one-liners, and she was being snarky and British and posh. Mm-hmm. And Kratos was angry and angry and angry and
an asshole.
Yeah, and he was a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And then you look at the new Tomb Raider, and you look at the new God of War, and all that has been stripped away. All that has been pulled away from them, and you're left with Survival Man and Survival Girl.
Yeah, and it's like every defining feature of the franchise is stripped away in order to make it fill some sort of corporate niche, to kind of, it's the same idea as Cliffy B is making a fucking Battle Royale game because PUBG and Fortnite did it. It's the same fucking idea.
The thing is that, like, okay, let me just, like, looking at Tomb Raider, for instance, like, the idea is that, okay, we're doing a kind of, like, prequel Tomb Raider, like, a soft reboot of Tomb Raider to, like, show her younger and, like, her first, like, real dangerous adventure.
Right.
Like, the way these are going, this Lara will not turn into the posh one-liner, like, backflipping Lara.
Because she's too busy in therapy.
Yeah, she's too scared and vulnerable to turn into that character. Like, if this was a story about a young, vulnerable Lara becoming, the cool, cocky, badass, archaeologist adventurer, great, but that's not the course they're going. And same with Kratos, who is the opposite of that, which is, you can't walk back everything Kratos has done.
He literally murdered an entire pantheon of gods.
Doomed Greece.
He felt bad because he wouldn't admit to the fact that he killed his wife and son.
Kratos' whole origin is that he got mad at Ares because Ares didn't tell him his family was nearby one of his blood rages.
Yeah, that's it. It's not...
Ares, why didn't you stop me from killing my family? Brrr! What is the smart thing to do? Kill the rest of Greece!
Like, come on. You can't walk that back and be like, actually, Kratos is a loving father.
And it's funny because, like, you look at interviews and they're like, all these reviews for the game and stuff, it's like, they're making Kratos more vulnerable by giving him this son he cares about. It's like, he murdered his family!
He already had one of those!
He had a family and he murdered them! You can't walk it back! You can't be like, oh, well,
on this episode.
he can't be like, oh, well, he loves this son. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. That's not how you make, like, a likable... You can't take an asshole character and staple a baby to them and be like, look, he's a good guy now. That's not how redemption arcs work.
We were saying it earlier. Joel's a bad person. And Joel at the end of The Last of Us becomes better because he finds something to care about and he finds something to actually connect with. Someone he gives a shit about.
Right.
He develops as a character as a result of that.
But he's still a bad man.
He's still a douchebag, but he's better. You cannot... Kratos is irredeemable. Whatever Joel's sins are, Joel has done horrible things to stay alive, okay?
Right.
Whatever, he has that vague justification of, like, he is doing it to keep going, you know?
Because
he's killed a lot of people,
he's
stolen a lot of things, he's tricked people, he's deceived them. But he's doing it because he didn't have a choice, because he needed to find some way to survive in this world.
Right.
Kratos does all this horrible shit because he's mad. Kratos can stop at any time, but he doesn't because he's mad. You cannot walk that back.
You can't. I'm sorry. You cannot.
Earlier today I watched a scene.
I don't care how many babies you staple to Kratos. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I watched a cutscene earlier from, I think, God of War 3. It's like a gameplay sequence of it, because I'm just like, because I only played a little bit of God of War 1. It wasn't here's the thing. I don't like God of War. I wasn't a big fan of it. Right. But I am still mad at what Sony did to this franchise.
Right. No, that's understandable. You didn't like God of War, but you, like, understood it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I understood what the appeal was. It didn't click for me, but I can understand why people would like it. But, like,
right.
I watched a bit of gameplay from God of War 3, I think it was, where it's Kratos is escorting this servant woman around this, like, environment, and he's, like, protecting her. And he's, like, he's killing all these guys, and he's, like, constantly pushing her forward to, like, advance. And it's, like, at the end of it, this is, like, a 10-minute sequence, and at the end of it, he fucking straps her to a gear and uses her crumbled body to, like hold the gears in place to keep the doors open.
God.
Kratos is a bad man.
He's a monster. That's the whole point of these games. Part of it is, like, because, like, back in the day, right? Back in when God of War was, like, a franchise that people gave a shit about. Like, there was, like, a subgenre of the character action game where you played as, like, an asshole. Like, there was Darksiders, and there was God of War, and there was a few other games kind of like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's that fucking game where you go to hell?
Dante's Inferno?
Dante's Inferno, yeah, like the book. Sorry, I totally, like, blanked on that one. But that's the whole idea. It was a subgenre of the Japanese character action game. It was, like, the Americanized version where you play as, like, an asshole in, like a fucked up place. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that was, like, a whole, like, a thing, you know? And the whole idea was that there is kind of, like, a slight power fantasy to being, like, the asshole in video games. That's why games like Mass Effect and Fallout, back before Bethesda ruined it, they had, like, an appeal, was that you could kind of, like, vent some frustration in these video games and play as an asshole, you know? Like, That was their defining feature. It might not be for you, but some people dug it. I enjoyed the first God of War. It's not perfect, but I enjoyed it, you know?
Right.
Because it's kind of like, it's a little cathartic to just be, like, a huge asshole and just fuck everybody up. It's great. But so then, like, you take that, like, Kratos does not need redemption because the whole point of his character is that he's an asshole. You know?
Yeah,
it's the whole point of the franchise.
He doesn't get to feel bad.
No! I'm sorry, he doesn't. And then, so then you make this fucking, like, game about Kratos feeling bad and being a good father and all this shit, and it's so transparently corporate.
Kratos being sad and tired and, like, needing his son to, like, boost up to higher platforms. Like, straight up doing The Last of Us, like, here, Ellie, cup his hand so that he can give Ellie a boost onto a platform.
Right. He should be football throwing that
child
up onto a platform.
His method of, like, getting to a high place should be to fucking double jump like he has been doing for the past 5 games.
But no, now we make video games that are very serious with a lot of gravitas and don't you know, and blah blah blah, and fuck you. I'm so tired. It's such transparent corporate nonsense, you know?
And it's like we talked about this with this podcast, like I mentioned, it's a double-edged sword when we talked about, like, visuals for The Last of Us, because look at what all these reviews are pointing to.
It's how pretty it is.
It's how pretty it is, and how deep and, like, their relationship between Kratos and fucking whatever his name is, Atreus.
Atreus?
Yeah. Like how deep their bond is, and how, like, this is a new vulnerable side of Kratos. So, like, okay, well, do you throw the axe good?
Does it, like, is it enjoyable? Does it, like, function?
When you hit a monster, does the monster react in a satisfying way? Like,
is this game worth my $60? Because if I wanted to watch like a pretty movie about like Greek shit, I have like a lot of choices.
Yeah.
You know, like why would I spend $60 on a movie when going to the movies costs $12?
Right, exactly. And that's the problem with all of these games, is that, like, you know, and this is another problem I have with cinematic games, and it's the problem with The Last of Us, with Tomb Raider, and with God of War, and all these. Mm-hmm. It's that these games tend to try to emphasize, like, you can play how you want, and they'll show off their skill tree, and it's always the most rudimentary, no-nonsense skill tree ever.
And by the end of the fucking game, you'll have every one of those skills anyway, so what does it matter?
You'll have everything you need, barring, like, maybe, like, 2 or 3 that, like, you don't care about, you know?
Right, because they're the fucking skills that nobody uses.
Yeah, you are not shaping your character to however you want them to be with this,
you're just playing the same fucking thing over and over again.
Because they can't develop their game around that if their game is going to be linear like this.
Right, yeah.
You know? Like, they can't give you abilities that make you circumvent their fun set pieces.
Because the set piece is God in these games, and I hate set piece games. I didn't like any of the set pieces in The Last of Us, because the whole time I was in it, I knew I was in a fucking set piece. The most egregious one, and it was the exact moment I realized that no matter how good the plot in The Last of Us was, I was never going to replay this fucking game ever, as long as I live. There's a bit right before you go to the hospital, like literally right before the end of the game. It's what knocks Ellie out before Joel goes on his murder rampage. It's that bit when you're crossing the bus, and then the bus tips over in the water, and you fall into, like, the subway river thing.
Yeah.
And, like, the bus is filling up with water, and you are pressing the buttons to move Joel forward, and then Ellie falls in, because she can't swim, and, like, the idea is Joel is, like, desperately trying to get to Ellie, right?
Right.
No matter what you do in that sequence, you will never, ever be able to get to Ellie fast enough to make that not happen. So why not just put it in a cutscene? Why make me basically do a QTE?
It's the same problem I have with Tomb Raider is really egregious about this, which is you see it in all of these cinematic games.
Yeah.
Which is the sequence where the character is running and the environment is crumbling around them.
Yep.
Yeah. And you get one of those down, and then you realize all I did was press forward. Yeah,
you never, like, actually did any real maneuvering, except for, like, the occasional, like, ducking out of the way of a hazard or whatever.
Like, kind of sidestepping something, or, like, jumping onto the next platform, and
then the thing is that if you fuck it up and you die, like, the checkpoint is 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
So
you are not...
There's no tension.
It's a thing where everything is falling around you, and... You know, the platform is shaking and the bridge is about to collapse, but
oh no,
there's no tension. There's no, like...
Right.
They're trying to recreate the tension you feel when you have 1 health left and you've wasted all of your healing items and the boss is still at, like, 50% health.
Right, but
they
don't want to make it too video gamey, because video games are not what we're here to make, even though it's a fucking video game.
They want that tension without the actual threat incorporated with it, and that is a movie.
That's a movie. That's a movie.
When The Rock runs down, like, a bridge and it's about to collapse and the volcano is erupting around him, that's exciting, because we don't have any control over The Rock.
Right.
We are slaves to what the script says happens to The Rock, you know? In a video game, we have the control, and, like, taking that control away just to make it look pretty, all you're doing is just making us hold down the direction and press a button occasionally.
Yeah, why not?
And that's not fun for us.
Yeah, like, it's just busy work. It's video game busy work.
Yeah.
You know, to make people feel like, oh, I'm so engaged. Something so tense is happening. Oh my god, something crazy. Look at me doing all this crazy shit. But if you pulled the camera back, you're like, oh wait, no, you're just holding forward. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
and
you're not doing anything.
And sometimes you'll even get things where, like, it doesn't matter if you hold forward or not. Like, you can stay in that location and like everything will still crumble around you, but it won't collapse until you jump off.
Until you hit the next like little checkpoint or whatever. Yeah. It's all false tension. It's not. Yeah. There's no like consequences or anything like that. I don't know. It sucks.
It's transparent. It's transparent when it happens.
It's so lazy.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to think of any way to make this sequence more fun to play. They're just like, we're gonna put the player in a movie because we want to make movies. It's
the difference between taking away control for a scripted sequence like that is not the tension you feel when you're playing, say, a survival horror game or a stealth game where your equipment is robbed of you and your options are robbed of you.
Right.
That's tense because your decisions will matter at that point.
Yeah.
These chase sequences, these set piece things, are not tense. They're not exciting because you only have one choice, and that is to win.
That's it, and it's like a Marvel movie. No offense, but like sometimes in these in modern action movies, you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen? Well, you know what's gonna happen. Nobody of importance is gonna die because the Infinity War still needs to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no tension there.
And the difference between that, is that like it's still a movie, and like of course you're going to have the thing where like these kind of movies where like the hero wins and stuff, but like with a game it's more transparent because like like I said, like the rock is the rock is running down the side of the volcano and you only have 15 minutes left in the movie, like I don't know, something really big might happen in the climax.
That might be kind of cool, yeah.
These chase sequences happen like the middle of the game.
And they're not cool.
You have like you have a whole half of a game to play, so nothing really bad can happen.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Your action hero movie man might like get his leg caught and like he might lose his leg or something, there might be
there's like the tension of what's going to happen to this character,
Yeah. You cannot do anything in these scripted sequences that will hinder your ability to play the game, and that's what makes them transparent. That's what makes them just like... It makes them so nothing.
They're so nothing. That's what it is that so many of these sequences, these little set PC sequences, are just like, they're just nothings. They're nothing, Like the bit in The Last of Us. God, and that whole fucking sequence just sucked. The part where Ellie steals a horse and runs, and it lasts for like 5 hours, when it should have been like a 10-minute gameplay sequence. Oh my god, everything about that sequence sucks. Because, like, how did Ellie get past all those raiders?
Yeah,
why isn't she stuck fighting them on a fucking... Like, it's so transparent. It's just like, we need to make the player feel like they're engaged and they're doing something. But, like, nothing will change. Nothing is going to be any different,
Yeah, Ellie can't be dead or in trouble because she's needed for the rest of the game.
Right, and so, like, why did you make this huge, long gameplay sequence other than, like, we need to make it more like a video game? Like, it just...
But, like, in a bad way. But, like, in a way that,
way. Like, in a bad way.
It's filler, basically.
It is, that's what it is. Chase sequences and all this shit with the fucking horses in The Last of Us and the running away out of a collapsing building in Tomb Raider, it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It all does the same thing. It's window dressing to make the player feel like they're having some kind of effect on the world, and they're really not.
It's kind of along the same lines of just, like, losing that impact, like, immediately once you, like, realize what's going on. Like, the other problem with these cinematic games is that they very quickly become outdated, The Last of Us already is outdated. It's only been 5 years old, and it's already outdated,
Right, yeah. I will never play... Like I said, I will never play The Last of Us again.
Yeah, and, The Last of Us is one of the few games that still look really good, but it was at near the end of the PS3's life cycle. Compare that to a lot of other of these realistic PS3 games, and they look like trash now.
Yeah. You're building your whole game around, like, visual shit, but it's not visual stuff that's going to hold up in 10 years,
Yeah. It doesn't last. And, a lot of these stuff that, like for instance, like Heavy Rain, which looked impressive in the day, but after stuff like MGS5 or, like, all these other games, like, the realism has completely dropped off.
Yeah.
LA Noir's facial capture stuff is still pretty cool, but, like, the visuals themselves have quickly become dated in every other aspect.
Yeah, because everybody has the same fucking hairstyle.
Yeah.
And you start to notice that after a while. You're like, oh,
it's very quickly lost its cool appeal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then compare that to stuff like, say, Okami or Wind Waker, which still look amazing to this day.
They hold up great because they have a sense of style about them that is something more. And I think that's part of what does make The Last of Us, like, hold together so well, is that it has a sense of aesthetic. But, like, that's because Naughty Dog is really good at what they do. Like, even with all my critique of The Last of Us, they still have a great sense of art design.
The Last of Us and Horizon will hold up as the years go on because they have a sense of design.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Oh my god, Horizon. Oh my god, just talking about The Last of Us just makes me want to play Horizon. You know?
Right.
an actual video game. Amazing.
And so like all that stuff is just like everything that like anything that you can throw money at to make better, like graphics or sound quality or like voice acting, all runs this risk of very quickly becoming dated and becoming, like, laughable as time goes on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Whereas stuff that has, like, solid art direction or stuff that has, like, a unique concept, like the Jack series or the Ratchet and Clank games. So, like, one of the things that's interesting is that, like, a lot of these games you'll point at and say, like, oh, it looks just like a movie. Like, when my mom saw, like, a clip of Metal Gear Solid 5, she thought she was looking at a movie trailer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, like, one of the back of the box quotes for one of the Ratchet and Clank games is, it's like playing a Pixar movie.
Yeah.
And that says something more, because that means, hey, this game has really great art direction and great character design, which are like the highlights of a Pixar movie, you know?
Movie. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And you would much rather have that every single day of the week than more of the fucking same. Like,
Ratchet is a character that's been around for, like, over a decade at this point.
Yeah.
And his character design still holds up because they are able to reinvent it for higher fidelity. And same with stuff like Mario, you know?
Yeah.
They can take that same core character design and just increase the graphics and, like, the polygon count.
Right.
And he still looks great, but he's still the same rudimentary design. Yeah. Like, having good character design, having good art direction, and having a good style to your game is way more important than realism.
And a sense of... And even if your game has got some, like, visual technical hiccups or whatever, the idea of having, like, a sense of aesthetic plus a sense of, like, it's good to play, you know? Like, having a game that you actually enjoy playing means you can kind of ignore some of the visual issues because, like, shit, the game itself still plays great. Like, Mario 64 kind of looks like dog shit now in 2018, but it's still fun to play, you know? Because it's still like, solid as shit, you know?
Good gameplay and good, like, level design are timeless.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can always go back to games that have a good sense of, like, giving you a unique experience with the controller and, like, a unique playing field to run around in. Like,
or just a unique
but games
way
that rely on graphics
or
on voice acting or story can quickly become dated.
Yeah, absolutely. So
there is one final point. I just want to, like, discuss this really quickly.
Oh yeah?
Because everything we've said about cinematic gameplay and all this stuff we've talked over and over again.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you just one question, and we can kind of get into this, which is, so all this we say about, like having these cinematic cutscenes and having this, like, you know, trying to make a movie out of a video game. Why was Kojima able to get away with it?
Because Kojima did weird shit between all of that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is that, you know, we can look at, like, Metal Gear Solid, like, especially 3, 4, and 5. And it's like, this guy wants to make movies.
Yeah.
But he has such a much better grip on, like, making a compelling movie.
Well, here's the thing, too, is that, generally speaking, now I haven't played Metal Gear Solid 5, so I can't, like, speak to its quality personally. But, that being said, if you want a good breakdown of why, like, for fans are not a huge fan of 5. Like, the gaming public as a whole fell in love with it, and it sold like gangbusters. But like the fans of the series are not a big fan of it. They don't love it the same way they love 2 and 3 especially. Go watch. There's a video by Super Bunny Hop, who's a friend of the Two Best Friends. Go watch that video, and it's like a 40-minute long video, and it's totally worth your time. But the general idea is that everything that made the long cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 palatable. Those things aren't really in Metal Gear Solid 5. It doesn't have the same degree of weird characters. It doesn't have the same degree of strange shit going on in the actual game, you know?
Right,
it doesn't have as much intelligent stuff to say. It doesn't have part of the reason why MGS3 can get away with it is because at one point, if you just leave the game on, then the end will just die of old age.
Kojima is the auteur of Kojima is what every one of these cinematic gameplay designers wants to be. David Cage wants to be Kojima.
Yeah, but without any of the risk involved of doing weird shit Kojima does it, you know?
You look at some of the things that you do in Beyond Two Souls, and it's he wants to be Kojima, but Kojima is doing avant-garde shit with film.
Yeah.
If Kojima were to direct a film, it would not be your standard Hollywood action film.
No, it would be something weird and different.
Yeah, it would be very different and very unique. And so, everything we're saying about, the problems of cinematic gameplay doesn't apply to Kojima, because Kojima knows what he's doing, and he knows how to create a unique, enriching experience.
Because when you are pressing the buttons in his game, you're still, sure, there's, and Metal Gear Solid 4 is, deeply flawed, because, hey, after Metal Gear Solid 3, Kojima didn't want to make Metal Gear games anymore. That's really important.
Yeah.
And, Konami kept making him, so, Metal Gear Solids 4 and 5 are kind of not as great, because Kojima was tired of it. And that's, acceptable, because he was stuck in a job he hated, and it took a long time for him to get fired. But, the act of there's still unique shit happening during the button pressy part of the game.
You look at what he does for stealth, and like we said, like I said at the very beginning, Solid Snake doesn't have unique abilities or special powers, but he has gadgets, and the enemy AI is advanced enough that your stealth experience is unique, because everyone fucking blew their minds when you were playing Metal Gear Solid 1, and it's whose footprints are these?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were holy shit,
what? The fuck?
It catches you off guard, and even MGS5, despite, him kind of making it under duress, he still crammed it full of unique, enriching, stealth things that are dynamic and change as you progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Flawed as Metal Gear Solid 5 is, it does not need to be an open world game, Konami. Oh my god. But, flawed as it is, there are still, 1,000 ways to complete different sequence. I mean, there are just dozens of ways to approach the problem different ways, and I think that's great. Metal Gear Solid 3 is, the absolute high point of the franchise, and it's because there are so many unique and varied and interesting ways to interact with that game, so that in between these long-ass cutscenes of, weird plot shit happening, you have these, just perfect gameplay sequences where you are just really enjoying the act of being in this world and doing shit and testing it out and playing around with the AI and just there's 1,000 ways to approach a problem, and so everybody has a different story, and I love that. Metal Gear Solid 3 is great for that.
What really separates Metal Gear Solid, which I would say is a cinematic game, it's very much based on but movies. It's a cinematic game in the correct way, which is
right
where you. And the thing is, if you look at, the four we mentioned, God of War, Uncharted, Tomb Raider, and The Last of Us,
right.
At least Uncharted, Tomb Raider, and The Last of Us all have heavy emphasis on stealth,
Right.
You compare that to Metal Gear Solid, and you can have the same length conversation about the gameplay as you can the story in Metal Gear Solid, and you cannot say that about those other three.
No, no.
The stealth in Metal Gear Solid is so far beyond those three, along with having a very cinematic, like, story presentation, you know?
Right, yeah. Because, like, Kojima understands. I love Kojima, but I also don't think, like, the man is a god. But, like some people do. But I love Kojima. I'd probably follow him into hell anyways, you know what I mean? But the deal is that there's an understanding here that if you're gonna make a game that's about, like, big, long, goddamn cut sequences, then, like, make the other half of the game just as involved. Don't just staple gameplay onto your movie and then call it a video game. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the important point here. I will probably be referencing Nier Automata on this podcast every single episode from now until the end of time. Sorry. Nier does it too. Nier has cut sequences, and then it has gameplay sequences, but the gameplay stuff is, like, vital to the story. You know? Like, it all is meant to be a package. You can remove all the video gamey shit from The Last of Us, and you would still get the same understanding of the plot, essentially. If you took out the video gamey shit out of Nier Automata, it would not have the same impact. That's ultimately what this is all about.
And what I was thinking about, like when trying to, like, think about, like, what games do this well and what games do this wrong, and they're like, there is no single right way to do this, and that's, again, what makes video games so unique. Is I'm like, okay, well, what is the opposite of the cinematic games? Like, how would I do this? I was like, okay, well, maybe you have control in the cutscenes. Well, that doesn't really fix the problem, because that's what stuff like Half-Life does, or like Portal does, you know? Like, that doesn't fix the problem with the cinematic storytelling. Like, and so I was thinking, like, you have a medium in which you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
Movies have limitations. Books have limitations, you know? But video games, you can tell your story in literally any conceivable way.
So why are you wasting our time telling it like a movie?
Yeah. Do it in a way that you cannot do on a film studio.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's impressive. That's creative and unique. And that's the problem with these AAA games, is, like we said at the beginning, like, they want to legitimize themselves by
they're somehow creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, they're trying to be something that they're not, you know?
Right, yeah. But that's just AAA gaming in general. Like, the vast majority of AAA gaming is completely creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, and it's,
you know?
The other problem with it is that, like, you also get the same thing with movies compared to books.
Yeah.
You know, you get, oh, this isn't like just your standard Hollywood, you know, garbage movie. This is a real serious drama. Mm-hmm. Fuck off.
Yeah. Movies, everything has its own function and its own purpose and its own way of interacting with the audience.
What I'm saying is that, like, there is nothing wrong with making a game like The Last of Us or making a game like Uncharted. They are still fun, functional games. What we're saying is that they aren't unique.
Yeah,
and that when you have a medium that can explore these things, like, if you like these games, I don't care. If you like the God of War 4, I don't care. You can like whatever the hell you want to like, you know?
Right.
But don't tell me this game is something it's clearly not.
Yeah, don't lie to me and tell me it's a masterpiece when we are basically playing the same game that came out 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what it boils down to. Like, you know, I don't care if you draw enjoyment from these kind of games. That's fine. That's great. You know, awesome.
You do whatever you fucking want. But
yeah, but this is a medium where you can be creative and do whatever you want. And, like, you know, it's the same thing with, like, oh, this isn't your standard Hollywood schlock movie. I like Hollywood schlock movies. Yeah. They're fun. I don't care. Like, don't try to pretend you're something you're not. Like, movies can have special effects. Books can't.
Yeah.
Every form of storytelling medium has something it can do that you cannot do anywhere else. And the best thing you can do is be creative and do what you can't. Do what you can in other franchise, in other mediums.
Embrace it.
Yeah. You know, that's how movies were legitimized. That's how TV was legitimized when they started doing things that you couldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, a book is, like, even Jesus, like, even a novel was, like, once upon a time, like, an interesting new thing. Like, there's a whole spiel I could go about this, but, like, the novel was a new idea once upon a time, and it was like, well, you can tell a story in a novel differently than you can tell it in, like, a play, because plays have been around forever.
Play, or, like, an oratory story, like, printed word was a new way to tell stories, and you could do something different with that. You didn't have to rely on a speaker telling you that story now.
Yeah, you could keep that story the exact same way every single time, and everybody could experience that story differently because you were reading it and you were imagining it in your own head, and it was different. Cool. And then movies happened, and then TV happens, and then video games happen. You know?
Yeah. So, don't be afraid. AAA games. Don't be afraid to explore.
But no. They will.
No.
AAA publishers are the worst people on Earth. And I say that loving Horizon. Like, Sony? No.
But where is Chewbacca in the Star Wars game? You won't,
I hate EA.
It won't be fun if Chewbacca is not there.
Even though, like, the best Star Wars game ever made is Knights of the Old Republic. It's fine. Whatever.
What we're saying is that ultimately, at the end of the day, like, AAA games and cinematic games are just, they are not exploring.
They're not what's gonna move the medium forward.
Yeah, they are not progressing the way that, like, all the indie games we've done on Indie Week are, you know?
Yeah, or even like, the small, what is it? If there's AAA, I heard somebody once call, like, Nier and stuff like it's like a AA game, you know?
Yeah,
I get behind that. Yeah, sure. AA gaming is where people are allowed to be like they're working on a smaller, but that's a problem. And God, we can't. We're almost at the 2-hour mark. We are,
stop. But the budget is also a problem.
So you have to make it as like mass market appeal as humanly possible. You know what I mean? Like to the lowest common denominator, and that means like make a movie, even though like obviously with the sale of things like with the explosive popularity of things like Nier and Undertale and fucking even Persona, which is like very much a video game. P5 is like video gamey as shit, and people loved it. It sold like gangbusters. Things like that, it's obviously people actually do want their video games to be like video games, not to be like movies. But whatever. Publishers are fucking creatively bankrupt. It's fine.
Yep. When you throw that much money at it, you have to make all that money back, so you have to make it appeal to everyone, and it's you can be more creative if you have less money.
Yeah.
Because you can afford it that way.
Right. Oh well. Whatever. What we're trying to say before we close this podcast out, before we wrap it up for the night, it's 2 hours, shit. Is stop giving God of War 2018 like perfect scores, you fucks.
Really look at that game as a video game and decide if it's worth that.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we done?
I think we're done. I think we've...
Sub 2 hours!
I think we've covered everything we need to cover.
We did it. Alright, fuck it.
So thanks to Visager. Future background music. If you want to yell at us about how God of War actually is the best game ever made, you can do it on our Twitter at thegorgepodcast, or you can email us at thegorgepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate money to us again, you can do it as coffee.fi.com/THEGOR. Right. Or you can also send money to Sarah's other podcast, Patreon, which she will tell you about that podcast now.
Ooh, hey, nice. That's a new intro for it. Hey, I'm in another podcast with some cool friends. It's called Big Gay Nerds. It's me and some cool queer friends sit around and we play tabletop RPGs together. We try out new systems. We have a lot of fun. We don't take it too seriously. And it's a good time. We love it. I'm actually not playing right now. I took a month-long break because I needed to just kind of decompress and get back into it. I think they're playing some sort of like Warhammer or something. I don't know. You should go check it out, and I probably need to listen to that episode too. Anyways, we're Big Gay Nerds on SoundCloud and Twitter and Tumblr and blah blah blah. It's easy to find us. So yeah, thanks.
Yep. So that'll do it for us.
I'm not going to go the easy route. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say fuck Polygon, because theirs is the review that made me start crying blood. Go read that masturbatory piece of shit.
Yeah. Fuck Polygon and fuck every game reviewer that's super impressed by this game that has done nothing new.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.